Back in February, Sana of Books and Quills made a video in collaboration with the very well-read Miss Rosianna, announcing her own intention to read more Shakespeare. Her aim was to read 10 Shakespearean plays by the end of the year. However, recent tweets indicate that she's a little behind. In fact, with December drawing alarmingly close, she's still got 9 to go. My response to this was, of course, to suggest that she still has time. I've had an essay crisis or 600. I know that you can definitely read the entirety of War and Peace, 12 commentaries on Tolstoy's narrative style, as well as a few biographies listing his spurious psychological influences, while still getting your essay due in by 6 AM the next morning. Sometimes I am rather glad uni over. In fact, this is probably not entirely dissimilar to how I actually got my Shakespeare reading done. Because as coincidence would have it, over if not the last year, the last academic year, I had an exam on the Bard. I thus ended up slightly unwittingly rapidly consuming such portions of his work as to be liable to induce indigestion. By which I mean I at least managed to read Sana's supposed 10. In fact, I managed a whole extra one. My Oxford degree, like Voldemort's soul, came in 7 supposed parts. That meant Shakespeare was just over 14% of my final grade. Why did I only read 11? How did I pass that thing? But yes, with regards to the Jacobean stage, there were quite a few points on which it appeared that Sana and I had almost perfectly divergent reading strategies. Firstly, Sana's motivation was in buying beautiful editions, which she actually got from the shop I currently work in. I had motivation enough in the form of a growly tutor and the knowledge that if I failed my exams, I would spend the rest of my natural life hissing in my own ear about how useless I was. So ultimately, the editions I favoured weren't particularly beauteous or even consistently held together at the spine. In fact, my favourite was a monstrous combined works. See this? This is my head. This book is bigger than my head. The Quasimodo of the book world. I can't call it a Tyrion of tomes because despite its lack of a nose, that would hail it as a dwarf among volumes. And this thing is so huge and so heavy that I'm pretty sure it has the capacity to crush small dogs from not very great heights. This behemoth was in fact way too heavy for me to read at anything but my desk, and as such it doubled as a handy ball and chain. It forced me to sit down to my work, no distractions, and just read until verse enough had entered my brain. The other manner in which I seemed to pull starboard while Sana headed left was she seems to have gone for the Shakespeare staples, the Shakespeare canon. Whereas I thought, if I'm gonna have to read these, I might as well pick out the snub-nosed uglies no one else wants to adopt. Yes, hipster Stevie wanted some lesser-known Shakespeare. For me, this had advantages. If I wasn't enjoying the particular workings of a play, maybe I'd keep reading for the plot twists, to find out if the star-crossed lovers live happily ever after or end up poisoning each other in crypts. Wanting to actually find out what happens is generally what spurs me to the end of most books. Comedy of Errors, Coriolanus, and The Two Gentlemen of Verona. These were plays I literally knew nothing about, so reading them was fun in just finding out what on earth happens in them. Some plays I did read for their fabled stories, for their great characters. Macbeth and Othello for their tragic eponymous protagonists. This was also partially why I read Richard III, although that was supported a lot by the fact that I really wanted to better understand the references in Jasper Fforde. As an aside, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, seriously read this and keep Tyrion in mind. I think the Duke of Gloucester can't not have been inspiration for the imp. Julius Caesar was another play I needed so as to better understand the references of my contemporary loves. I wanted to find out if the fault, dear Brutus, wasn't in your stars, then where the hell was it? For those wondering, it's in themselves. Roman patricians basically have the opposite of terminal cancer. Much Ado About Nothing, probably my favourite play to date, was read so I could allow myself to watch Joss Whedon's adaptation, featuring Nathan Fillion as a bumbling Dogsbury. I liked that in Sana's original video she mentioned this play straight after Othello, because I spent a lot of my degree comparing those very two. I was basically arguing in one way that they were the same play. They basically have the same plot, this jealousy, cuckoldry, revenge plot, but then they differ within the traipsings of genre. One is a tragedy and one is a comedy. How do they achieve this? The Merry Wives of Windsor was chosen because I needed to meet Falstaff, and really didn't feel like wading through Henry IV and all his various parts. And my final choices were The Merchant of Venice and The Taming of the Shrew, so I could judge for myself whether Shakespeare was a sexist and or racist. It was this that probably formed the crux of my Shakespearean study. Shylock's treatment as a Jew and Catherine's as a woman are depictions I think modern readers can't help but focus in on. See, I was really glad in a way that I didn't just read these plays, that I studied them. I was forced to go back and watch years worth of recordings, read through reviews of hundreds of productions and also actor interviews talking about their impressions of their particular roles. We weren't instructed to simply read the original texts. We were pushed out there and told to find a history of performance. There were people who presented Shylock as a product of his society, as a miser, as a distraught father. There were those who played Catherine and Petruchio in cahoots, trying to take society for all it was worth, as well as those who played her as a farcical dream of Christopher Sly, a man who no woman could or should obey. There were directors who cut the play around the play. They had Catherine give her final speech, which purportedly exalts the subservience of women, and yet do it obviously sarcastically. Do it with a wink and a grin at her new husband. Do it distraught, revealing her wrists slit and her lifeblood ebbing away. See, for me, Shakespeare's plays are like I'm in McBride's Girl, a half-formed thing. In any literary work, there will always be as many readings as there are readers. But in a play, in a text that is written and read with the knowledge that that's not all, that silent action, that costume design, that maybe even background music still has half the story to tell, it means the lines that limit interpretation must blur and widen even more. I think you can read these texts ignoring Roland Barthes' famous Death of the Author essay, just trying to determine exactly what Shakespeare the man might have actually thought and meant and wanted. But to do so would be to really limit yourself from the broad and beautiful ways in which these texts have across centuries been found and used and appropriated. I, breaking with my normal hatred of classics, actually really love Shakespeare. I mean, his language is amazing in the most traditional sense of the poetic, but so is Dryden's and Pope's and Donne's. I believe the reason that Shakespeare is more widely appreciated than any of those others is because his instruction manuals of play scripts have given readers and writers and directors and actors the space in which to continue to explore human character. Within his works there are necessary spaces, and within those spaces people must bring themselves. They must consider every which option, every sleight of feeling. That of characters falling in love, that of characters enraged in jealousy, that of all the problems of being Prince of Denmark. I'll read plays and before me will be gaps, the uncertainty of characterization and interpretation. I'll see more adaptations and read about even more beyond my scope, and these plays will never stop being fleshed out in some sort of fractal detail. So Sana, I've read those 10 you want to get under your belt. But it's not completed anything for me, I'm afraid. Yes, I've actually seen all the words on the same bits of smudgy paper, sonnet lines crushed together. I might have even seen a motley crew jolly them across the boards. But I still don't consider myself to have taken in any more than a sliver of that stuff those dreams are made of. Definitely read them. But I fear it will lead you, as it has definitely led me, to just realise the rabbit hole has infinite scope. It's turtles all the way down, dear. Oh, slow-winged turtles.